Have you ever imagined what it would be like if that girl who always sat in the back of the class, who brought her lunch in an ice cream tub and wore the same sneakers with holes for months, suddenly showed up at an alumni reunion as a truly successful businesswoman? This is not a story about revenge, it's about how pain can become fuel when you decide that you will no longer accept being less than you deserve. Get ready, because this story will affect you in ways you never imagined. Subscribe to the channel, like this video and comment on which city you are watching from. When Isabella Santos received the invitation to the 2015 class reunion at Colegio Dom Pedro, she hesitated for 3 days before responding. They were the same people who made a point of showing for 6 long years that she was not part of the group, who laughed when she fell in the courtyard carrying a pile of books borrowed from the library, who whispered, "Poor thing," every time she walked through the hallways with her patched backpack and worn-out shoes. But on that Friday in March, something changed inside her. It wasn't a thirst for revenge, it was a pure and genuine curiosity about who she had become after so long away from that life that had hurt her deeply. What no one expected was that the invisible girl from their memories was about to shine in a way they would never forget. Bruna Oliveira was sitting at her usual table in the shopping center's food court, absent-mindedly picking at her acai, which was already melting while she scrolled non-stop through Instagram. She worked at a women's clothing store right there in the mall, far from the glamorous life of a digital influencer that she pretended to have on social media, posting photos in places she could barely afford to visit. "Jessica, you need to see this now," she yelled at her friend who was in the eternally long line at McDonald's. Jessica Ferreira quickly approached, nervously fixing her blonde hair that had literally cost half her salary at the most expensive salon in town. She knew she couldn't afford it, but the pressure of keeping up appearances with Bruna was constant and suffocating. "What gossip did you find out this time? Do you remember that girl who looked like a walking ghost in high school?" "Ghost?" Jessica frowned in genuine confusion. "I have no idea who you're talking about." "Isabella Santos. The girl who was always completely alone during recess, always wearing those huge coats that looked like they had belonged to her father or older brother, carrying more books than an entire library on her back." "Oh, her." Jessica made a face like she had just remembered something unpleasant. "The weirdo who never spoke to absolutely anyone, always with that backpack patched with duct tape." "Exactly that one. And guess what? She just agreed to come to our meeting at the Emperador restaurant." Jessica almost choked on the soda she was drinking at the Emperador. "Bruna, that place is so expensive. A single ticket there costs more than I earn in a whole week." "Exactly. That's why it's going to be absolutely epic to see her face when she finds out she can't even afford the Art C. It's going to be the biggest show of embarrassment we've ever seen." Jessica R. forced herself, but inside her stomach churned with anxiety. As a shoe saleswoman in a small store downtown, earning only a minimum wage that barely covered her basic bills, she also couldn't afford to pay for dinner at that fancy restaurant. For years, she had been keeping up an elaborate lie about her real financial situation, which was snowballing into something impossible to control. "When is this meeting again?" she asked, trying to hide the growing anxiety in her voice. "Next Saturday at 8 p.m. I've already reserved a table right in the center of the main hall. I want absolutely everyone to see her arrive wearing some borrowed clothes and get completely lost, not even knowing how to behave." That same night, while a fine, persistent drizzle fell over the entire city, Jessica was driving her 2010 Goal, with the air conditioning broken for months, through the poorly lit streets of the historic center. The stifling March heat made the car windows fog up constantly, and she had to clean the windshield every few minutes. She stopped at a red light and made the fatal mistake of opening the bank app on her cell phone. The negative numbers seemed to scream from the screen, flashing red like an emergency alarm. She quickly closed the app, as she always did, pushing the harsh financial reality far from her thoughts once again. On the other side of the city, in her elegant home in the Vista Alegre condominium, Isabella was in her private office, looking at the invitation that had arrived by email. The virtual invitation shone on the screen of her laptop. You are invited to the reunion of the 2015 class of Dom Pedro School, Emperador Restaurant. Saturday, 8 p.m. The painful memories came like an uncontrollable avalanche. The endless hallways where she always walked leaning against on the wall, trying to go unnoticed in the central courtyard, where she ate lunch completely alone, under the only large tree, and the work presentations, where she would blush with nervousness while other students whispered and laughed quietly among themselves. She vividly remembered her father Roberto Santos, who had been an extremely respected and sought-after mechanic, owner of the family workshop, until a serious national economic crisis forced the closure of the business when she turned 13. The family had to quickly sell their comfortable house in the city center and move to a housing complex on the outskirts. From that difficult time on, her clothes began to come exclusively from thrift stores and church charity bazaars. Her school backpack had to be constantly patched with string and her sneakers developed holes that were carefully covered with pieces of tape. At Dom Pedro School, an institution traditionally attended by the city's established middle class, this situation automatically turned her into a complete social shadow. Bruna and her entire group did not exactly intimidate her in any way direct. In fact, they simply ignored her so completely and systematically that, at times, Isabella seriously doubted whether she really existed or whether she was just a ghost wandering the halls. She took refuge in the books in the school library with the desperation characteristic of someone who instinctively knew that knowledge was her only real chance of escaping that suffocating situation. She systematically arrived early every morning so that she could be alone in the library before classes started. She always left last when the school closed and spent absolutely every break reading under the stairs of Block B, where no one bothered her. Against all odds and expectations, she graduated as the top of her class overall. But at the graduation ceremony, only her family applauded when her name was called. She went up to the stage with trembling legs, received the Medal of Honor for academic merit and came down in complete silence, remaining invisible even at the moment of her greatest personal triumph. Now, exactly 10 years later, she stared at that digital invitation with a complex mix of feelings that she herself could not fully decipher. It wasn't anger, it definitely wasn't revenge, it was a mature and calm curiosity about who she had become versus who they all still imagined her to be. She slowly rose from her chair and walked over to the bedroom mirror. The woman staring back at her had something the painfully shy 16-year-old girl had never had. A genuine, unshakable confidence. It wasn't forced arrogance or artificial pretense. It was the deep and true peace of someone who had finally discovered her own intrinsic worth. Maybe it really is time to show up for real, she murmured softly to her own reflection. Jessica was at the cheapest hair salon she could find in town when her cell phone rang insistently with Bruna's name appearing on the screen. Hi, Bruna. What's up, Jessica? I absolutely need you to come with me to buy the most killer look ever. Bruna, I'm literally in the middle of getting my nails done. Jessica felt that familiar, agonizing tightness in her chest. How could she honestly explain that she didn't have any money to buy new clothes? How can you admit that your last significant clothing purchase was over 8 months ago and even then you had to pay it off in 6 installments on your credit card? So, it is absolutely essential that I look completely perfect and stunning when that pathetic ghost shows up and notices exactly how big a difference there is between us. Bruna, honestly, I don't know if I can spend a lot of money right now. Jessica hesitated, feeling smaller and smaller. Relax completely. My mother just gave me a substantial amount of extra money this month. I can easily lend it to you, if you want, no problem at all. The offer was extremely tempting, but Jessica knew perfectly well that accepting it would mean becoming even more dependent on this friendship that for years had turned into much more social theater than true and genuine affection. Thank you very much, but I already have something absolutely beautiful stored in my closet. Are you absolutely sure? Because I want us both to look completely impeccable and perfect. Meanwhile, on the other side of the city, Isabella was in an elegant and sophisticated boutique in the historic center, trying on dresses with the natural ease of someone who doesn't even need to look at price tags. The owner, Mrs. Marta, a refined lady who had worked at the establishment for over 2 decades, treated her with special affection and deference. "This dress looks absolutely perfect on you," Mrs. Marta said sincerely, carefully adjusting a red dress made of pure silk and impeccably tailored. "It's a completely exclusive piece that I had made especially for you. The color beautifully highlights your beautiful natural blonde hair." Isabella admired herself in the full-length mirror, delicately running her hand through her blonde hair that fell in natural, shiny waves over her shoulders. The dress was not only aesthetically beautiful, it was a true silent statement of personal achievement, elegant without ever being exaggerated, sophisticated without ever being pretentious or artificial. "It's absolutely perfect," she said with a genuine smile, handing over her premium credit card without hesitation. At home, she was carefully getting ready when her husband, Leonardo, entered the room with that affectionate smile that always made her feel special. He was a man with a naturally striking presence, an easy and spontaneous smile, intelligent eyes that always showed genuine and deep pride when he looked at her. "Are you nervous?" he asked affectionately, hugging her from behind as she finished adjusting her earrings. "Strangely calm," she admitted sincerely. "I thought I would be completely anxious and nervous, but I feel complete somehow." "Are you absolutely sure you really want to do this?" "I have to do this, Leo. Not for them, definitely not for them, but for myself. For too long, I allowed other people to completely define my personal value. Today they will finally find out who I have truly become." Leonardo smiled with that silent pride he always showed. "So let's show them exactly who you are." The Imperador restaurant truly lived up to its legendary reputation in the city. Majestic chandeliers made of imported crystal, carefully restored fine wood furniture. A stunning panoramic view of the artificial lake, which was considered the city's main postcard. It was exactly the kind of sophisticated place where important businessmen closed million-dollar deals and influential politicians made their most delicate negotiations away from the media spotlight. In the private room, specially reserved for the occasion, 10 former students of Colegio Dom Pedro were carefully arranged around a round table, impeccably prepared. Expensive floral arrangements imported especially for the occasion, check crystal glasses that reflected the ambient lights. A gourmet menu that cost literally more money than many people could earn working a whole week. Honestly, if I had known she would actually have the courage to show up, I would have invented that she was traveling abroad, Rodrigo Silva murmured nervously, fidgeting compulsively with the linen napkin. "Calm down, Rodrigo," Bruna said with that characteristic mischievous smile, carefully adjusting the pearl necklace borrowed especially from her mother for the occasion. "It will be exactly like a practical natural history class." We will be able to observe directly how social dinosaurs managed to evolve over the years. Quote, "Honestly, I'm not enjoying this whole vibe at all," said Thiago Costa, a dedicated nurse who has always been known and respected for his natural and genuine kindness. "Let's face it, we weren't very nice to her in high school. I still feel genuinely bad when I think about it." Nice. How exactly? Bruna seemed genuinely confused by the comment. "We didn't even talk to her normally. There's no way to be nice or nasty to someone who basically didn't exist socially." "That's precisely the main problem," replied Mateus Rocha, who had become a respected geography teacher, firmly. "We systematically treated her as if she were completely invisible." "You're exaggerating dramatically," Bruna rolled her eyes impatiently. "She was clearly antisocial by nature, and we were just completely normal teenagers being normal teenagers. It wasn't our social obligation to adopt the odd girl in the class." Jessica remained strategically quiet, nervously picking at the expensive entree she could barely afford even with a split bill. She had borrowed a dress from her older sister, and although it was objectively pretty, she felt like a complete farce out of place in that ostentatiously luxurious environment. It was exactly at that tense moment that the door to the hall opened softly and silently, and literally everything stopped. Isabella Santos entered the room with a majestic presence that absolutely none of them had ever seen or even imagined. The red silk dress fitted her body absolutely perfectly. Her blonde hair was loose in natural, shiny waves that harmoniously framed her face. Her makeup was soft, but definitely striking. But what really impressed and caught everyone's attention irresistibly was her unmistakable aura of absolute tranquility and unshakable confidence. This was definitely no longer the shy and scared girl who constantly hid behind piles of books. This was a mature and accomplished woman who knew exactly her place in the world. "Good evening, everyone," she said in a clear and melodious voice, which echoed softly through the hall in complete silence. "I sincerely hope I'm not late." 10 pairs of eyes were literally glued to her, some visibly shocked, others clearly in admiration. And Bruna? Bruna seemed to have just seen a ghost materialize in front of her. Thiago was the first to recover even a little from the initial shock. He quickly got up from his chair, almost knocking over his glass of water in the process. Quote, "Isabella, gosh, you look completely different. Please sit down with us." He politely pulled out a chair for her. And Isabella sat down with the naturalness characteristic of someone who was genuinely accustomed to frequenting the best places, calmly observing each face around the table, as if contemplating an album of old photos with a completely new perspective. "You all look very well," he said politely and sincerely, offering a warm but visibly reserved smile. "Isabella, you look absolutely stunning," stuttered Mateus, still processing the transformation. "Life really changes people in a profound way," he replied with natural simplicity. 10 years is really a long time." At that precise moment, an extremely elegant waiter approached the table, carefully carrying an absolutely spectacular bouquet of imported red roses. Exactly the kind of sophisticated floral arrangement that literally cost more money than a full monthly minimum wage for the distinguished Mrs. Isabella Montero, the waiter announced with professional deference and reverence. "Special courtesy of Mr. Leonardo Montero, CEO and President of the Montero Investimentos Group." If before there had been widespread astonishment, now there was absolutely total and overwhelming shock. Bruna literally choked violently on her wine, and Jessica dropped her fork, making a metallic noise that echoed throughout the room. "Montero?" Bruna finally managed to speak with her voice coming out completely strangled. "Montero Group, that gigantic business conglomerate? My husband Isabella answered completely naturally, as if you were casually commenting on the weather. Absolutely everyone present was perfectly aware of the reputation of the Montero Group, a true business empire that systematically controlled everything from large construction companies to extensive supermarket chains, with annual revenues in the impressive billions of reais. Leonardo Montero regularly appeared prominently on national lists of the most influential and powerful businessmen in the entire country. Did you really marry Leonardo Montero? Rodrigo asked, still trying to fully process the shocking information. Exactly 5 years ago, Isabella calmly confirmed. We met at an international entrepreneurship fair in Sao Paulo. Thiago finally managed to find his voice again. Isabella, we all sincerely want to deeply apologize for the school, for the way we treated you. It was absolutely unforgivable. I completely agree, said Mateus with transparent sincerity. We were young and completely immature, but that doesn't justify absolutely anything. You deserved much more respect from us. Jessica, her eyes visibly filled with emotion, added with a choked voice, it was genuinely cruel of us to systematically ignore you, as if you didn't exist. I deeply and sincerely regret that. Isabella watched them with unwavering calm, her expression remaining compassionate but completely unreadable. Thank you so much for acknowledging that. Honestly, you are completely right. It was truly painful, much more painful than you can even imagine. Isabella Thiago began hesitantly, but she raised her hand delicately. But that particular pain taught me something fundamental that no school subject could ever teach, that silence can be our most powerful response, that solitude teaches us to genuinely value our own company, that being systematically ignored can motivate us to build something absolutely impossible to ignore. Quote. And you definitely built it, Jessica murmured with genuine admiration. I really did. Isabella confirmed with discreet pride. Business Administration at USP with a full scholarship for academic merit, MBA in Strategic Management at FGV, postgraduate degree in Corporate Finance at the prestigious London Business School. London. Bruna finally managed to find her voice, although it still sounded hoarse and strangled. 2 absolutely incredible years, away from here, away from all the painful memories that made me feel small, genuinely discovering who I really was when no one knew me from my past. And after that, asked Rodrigo, clearly fascinated by the narrative. I returned to Brazil and set up a business consultancy specialized exclusively in small family businesses. It literally started in the bedroom of my house here in the city, and today we have offices operating in 12 Brazilian states. Bruna desperately tried to regain some control of the situation. What absolutely incredible luck, isn't it? Finding exactly the right man at the right time. Isabella immediately cut her off with a look that could literally freeze hell. Lucky, Bruna. The icy, cutting tone made absolutely everyone at the table instantly fell silent. Do you really think it was luck to work consistently 18 hours a day for 4 years straight to make my company grow consistently? It was luck to study religiously at dawn while working intensively during the day to pay for college. It was luck to take dedicated care of my father with serious heart problems while simultaneously running a growing company. I really didn't mean it that way. Bruna tried desperately to explain herself. I met Leonardo at a lecture I was giving on strategic financial management for small businesses. We talked for 3 hours straight about growth strategies before I even knew who he really was. Quote. Did you really give lectures? Mateus asked, genuinely impressed. I give lectures regularly throughout the country. I also wrote a book on female entrepreneurship, which became a national bestseller, and I coordinate an acceleration program for developing startups. The impact of the revelations was absolutely devastating. Jessica looked at her with a complex mix of admiration and something that seemed deep shame. Rodrigo seemed to be completely rethinking everything about what success really means in life. Bruna was visibly pale as a sheet. Another waiter approached discreetly with a small navy blue velvet box. Another special gift from Mr. Montero. Isabella opened it carefully, revealing a vintage emerald ring, clearly a collector's piece that made absolutely every woman sigh in admiration. The elegant note read in perfect handwriting, "To the most determined woman I know, your strength literally moves mountains. With infinite love, Leo." "It's simply beautiful," Jessica whispered reverently. "Leonardo collects rare vintage jewelry," Isabella explained, closing the box delicately. "But it's definitely not for the gifts that I fell in love with him." "Why then?" Fago asked with genuine curiosity. "Because he was literally the first man who took a deep interest in my ideas before even noticing my physical appearance, who genuinely fell in love with my ambition, my projects, my dreams of making a real difference. When we met, I was still living in a tiny apartment and paying all the bills with great difficulty." He paused meaningfully, looking directly at Bruna. "Leonardo saw me as a fascinating and capable person, not as someone who needed to be saved or changed." "You are genuinely inspiring," said Jessica, visibly moved. "You also have an NGO that offers completely free professional training courses to low-income youth. I know exactly what it's like to want to grow in life and not have real opportunities." "How many young people do you serve?" Mateus leaned in with interest. 300 per month in 5 different cities. Next year we'll expand to 10 more cities." The satisfaction in Isabella's voice was crystal clear, but without a trace of arrogance. It was the genuine pride of someone who has found her true purpose in life. Bruna, after long minutes in complete silence, spoke in a visibly forced tone. "Congratulations on absolutely everything. It's really impressive." There was something clearly false in the intonation that Isabella immediately picked up on. "Thank you very much, Bruna. And you, how is your life?" Quote. The seemingly simple question caught Bruna completely off guard. She felt exactly like a small child caught doing something wrong. "I work in sales, fashion, that kind of thing." "How interesting. In which store?" "The mall's dress up." Isabella nodded politely, but absolutely everyone noticed Bruna's obvious discomfort. Isabella rose gracefully from her chair. "Well, it was absolutely wonderful to see you all again. Thank you very much for tonight. Are you leaving already?" Fago asked, visibly disappointed. "Leonardo, wait for me outside. We have a very important business dinner tomorrow morning with foreign investors." Bruna, in a completely desperate attempt to regain some control, asked, forcing an artificial smile. Running out, Isabella stopped strategically at the door and turned slowly. When she spoke, she maintained her characteristic calm, but with an absolutely cutting force. "Running, Bruna, I've systematically run for years. I ran from the school hallways. I ran from the looks that made me feel small. I ran from the voices that whispered that I was good for nothing. But today I walked in here with a smile on my face, head held high. And I'm leaving in exactly the same way." She paused dramatically, looking directly at each person at the table, "because I finally understood that I was never really invisible. It was you who simply couldn't see who I really was." With these final and definitive words, she left the restaurant, leaving behind a group of people completely confronted with one of the greatest lessons in dignity they had ever witnessed in their lives. Outside, the entire city shone magnificently under the nightlights. Isabella walked elegantly to where a shiny black BMW was waiting. Leonardo immediately got out to open the door with a gentleman. "How was it?" he asked affectionately, hugging her tenderly. "Absolutely enlightening. I was finally able to close this painful cycle in complete peace. I'm immensely proud of you. I always have been." As the car glided smoothly through the illuminated streets, Isabella reflected deeply on the entire journey, from the completely lonely girl to the multiple jobs to pay for college to the moments of despair when she almost gave up on absolutely everything. "Do you know what has left the deepest impression on me?" she said thoughtfully to Leonardo. "What, love?" "I feel absolutely no anger, no satisfaction at having proven anything, only total completeness. That's exactly how we know you've truly overcome the past, when it completely loses its power to define you." "Exactly. They never defined me. I've always defined myself." In the restaurant, everyone was intensely processing what they had just witnessed. "We just watched a master class on how to transform systematic rejection into extraordinary achievement," Vago said with genuine admiration. "Isabella has always been genuinely special," Jessica murmured, wiping away the tears that insisted on flowing. "We were just too young and superficial to be able to see that." "The impressive strength she demonstrated today cannot be learned from any book," Mateus agreed thoughtfully. "It is achieved by facing difficulties with absolute dignity." Rodrigo stared at his own reflection in the window. And he definitely didn't like what he saw. "Do you see the irony? We thought we were the real successful ones with our parents, with steady jobs and our comfortable middle-class lives, but in reality we were just spoiled young people, confusing inherited privilege with personal achievement." Bruna remained completely silent, nervously fiddling with her mother's borrowed necklace, forced for the first time in her life to honestly confront who she really was versus who she had always pretended to be to others. "Bruna, are you really okay?" Jessica asked with genuine affection. "No, I'm not okay at all. Did you see her natural elegance, her true class? How she treated us with deep respect even after absolutely everything." Quote, "I saw it perfectly," Thiago said thoughtfully. "It made me completely rethink what kind of person I was at the time and what kind of person I genuinely want to be from now on." Jessica took a deep breath and made a courageous decision that she had been putting off for years. Quote, "Guys, I have to confess something. I'm sitting here pretending to have a life that I definitely don't have, desperately trying to impress people who probably do exactly the same thing as me." "What do you mean?" asked Mateus with respectful curiosity. "I'm completely broke financially. I work as a regular saleswoman. I earn very little and spend absolutely everything trying to maintain a social facade." Quote, "She built a genuinely real life, with true purpose, authentic love, absolutely legitimate achievements." Jessica's courageous confession opened a completely unexpected emotional door. Isabella's simple transforming presence had created a kind of merciless mirror, where everyone was forced to see themselves without any of the usual masks. "Me too," whispered Bruna in an almost inaudible voice. "I work in a simple little store in the mall. I still live with my mother and I pretend on social media to have a glamorous life that exists only in my imagination." "What exactly do we do now?" asked Rodrigo with genuine concern. "We've changed radically," said Mateus with renewed determination. "Let's start by being completely honest. First rigorously with ourselves, then gradually with everyone else. And maybe we can genuinely contribute to her NGO," Vago suggested constructively. "It would definitely be a meaningful first step," he agreed thoughtfully. "A concrete way to honor the profound lesson she taught us about what it really means to be real people." The next morning, Isabella found a completely unexpected email from Vago waiting in her inbox. Dear Isabella, last night was a genuine awakening for absolutely all of us. We would sincerely like to support your NGO, not as a pathetic way to make amends for the past, because we know that is impossible, but as a concrete way to honor the transformative lesson you taught us about using our privileges to do good in the world. Can we schedule a meeting to discuss this properly? With deep respect and admiration, Thago, Mateus, Rodrigo and Jessica showed the message to Leonardo, who smiled with that quiet pride he always showed. What will he say to them? That all genuine help is always welcome. The young people our organization serves have absolutely nothing to do with our school background. They deserve all the chances and opportunities we can provide. She typed a cordial and professional response, scheduling a meeting for the following week. Not for forgiveness. That had already happened naturally in her heart, but because she genuinely believed in the fundamental human capacity to grow and transform. Bruna was completely alone in her small room in her mother's house, looking thoughtfully out the window at the constant movement of the street. For the first time in many years, she was facing her personal reality without any illusion or self-deception. She thought intensely about Isabella, about the silent strength she had always possessed, about the impressive way she transformed social isolation into deep self-knowledge, systematic humiliation into powerful motivation. Instead of feeling destructive envy and resentment, she felt something completely different and unexpected. Genuine inspiration. She opened her old notebook and began to write determinedly. Not a message for Isabella. She wasn't emotionally ready for it yet, but a detailed and real plan to change her life, to stop living on empty appearances and start building something genuinely real. Weeks later, Isabella received a completely unexpected visit at the main office of her on. Bruna was nervously at the reception, holding a small envelope with slightly shaking hands. Can I talk to you for a few minutes? Isabella immediately appeared at the door, noticing something fundamentally different. Less heavy makeup, simpler and more natural clothes, but paradoxically she seemed much more authentic and genuine. Of course you can, please come in. They sat comfortably in the administrative room, with a panoramic view of the central square, where children were playing happily. Bruna respectfully looked at the certificates of recognition hanging on the wall, the moving photographs of ongoing social projects, the handwritten thanks from families who had genuinely helped. I sincerely wanted to give you this, Bruna said hesitantly. It's not a lot of money, but it's absolutely all I can contribute at the moment. Isabella carefully opened the envelope, finding a modest amount, but a significant amount, and a completely handwritten letter. Bruna, you really don't need to do this. I really do need it. Bruna interrupted her firmly. Not for you specifically, but for myself. I spent my entire life pretending to be someone I was definitely not, mistreating people I considered socially inferior. You showed me concretely what it really means to have genuine substance. What are you doing now? Isabella asked with genuine interest. I started a technical course in social work and I volunteer at a community daycare in the neighborhood. I genuinely want to help children who are going through exactly what I went through, feeling completely invisible and rejected. That is absolutely beautiful, Bruna. I know perfectly well that we will never be true friends. I know that I will never be able to completely undo the harm I did. But I want you to know, you changed my life forever. You showed me that we can always be greater than our worst mistakes. Isabella stood up and, to Bruna's complete surprise, hugged her sincerely. We can all grow and transform. The past teaches us valuable lessons, but it doesn't have to hold us back forever. You are courageously proving that now. As Bruna left, moved, Isabella read the letter carefully. It was an absolutely sincere apology, but much more than that. It was a detailed account of a profound personal transformation. Bruna had written at length about how that particular night at the restaurant forced her to look in the mirror honestly for the first time, about the concrete steps she was taking to become a genuinely better person, about how she wanted to honor the lesson in dignity that Isabella had given her. She told Leonardo about the emotional visit that same night. "How do you feel about that?" "Deeply grateful. For a long time I carried those painful memories, like heavy stones on my chest. Then I gradually learned to forgive, but there was still a significant emotional distance. Today I feel that absolutely everything had a greater purpose." "How so?" "My traumatic experience in high school not only strengthened me personally, it ended up inspiring others to become genuinely better as well. It transforms even the most painful memories into something precious and meaningful." 6 months later, Isabella's NGO organized its largest annual event, a sophisticated charity evening at the city's convention center. Among the dedicated volunteers, Isabella recognized familiar faces working. Thiago coordinating the reception was efficiently staffed, Mateus meticulously organizing the auctions, Jessica lovingly helping with the delivery of certificates, and Bruna. Bruna was at the back of the room happily playing with the children who were helped by the project. During her moving speech as founder, Isabella spoke deeply about second chances, about how the most difficult experiences can become the most transformative, about how each person has the power to completely rewrite their own story. Exactly 10 years ago, I was a young woman who sincerely believed that she had no place in the world. Today I am here, not in spite of those difficult experiences, but specifically because of them. They taught me deep empathy, gave me inner strength, showed me that our capacity to grow truly has no limit. She paused meaningfully and looked lovingly at where Bruna was working dedicatedly with the children. I learned that genuine forgiveness is not about completely forgetting, it is about transforming pain into purpose, hurt into wisdom, scars into bridges to reach others who have gone through similar difficulties. The event raised enough funds to expand the programs to 15 different cities. But to Isabella, the real success was in the personal transformations she had witnessed, not only in the young people served by the NGO, but also in those who had once been her schoolmates. When absolutely everyone had left and the hall was being carefully tidied up, Isabella stood alone for a few minutes, contemplatively observing the view of the city through the panoramic windows of the convention center. Leonardo approached silently and stood by her side. "What are you thinking? How genuinely mysterious life is. If someone had told me 10 years ago that one day I would be working collaboratively with the people who ignored me at school, I would never have believed them. And now? Now I understand that sometimes our greatest blessings really come disguised as our greatest pains. If I had not experienced that profound solitude, I would never have developed the inner strength that brought me here. If I had not felt invisible, I would never have learned to truly see others." Leonardo embraced her tenderly and would never have become the extraordinary woman she is today. "Do you know what else? I would not change a single thing, not even the most difficult and painful parts, because they all led me exactly to this where I need to be." Years later, when Isabella was regularly invited to speak at schools about inclusion and personal growth, she always ended her inspiring talks with the same profound reflection. Her story does not end at the moment of pain or rejection. In fact, that is exactly where it truly begins. Every time someone makes you feel small, remember, they are only seeing a chapter of a book that you are still writing. And you have the absolute power to make the next chapters a true masterpiece. The invisible girl I was thought she didn't matter to anyone. The woman I have become discovered that I have always mattered, especially to myself. And you matter deeply too. Never forget that. Sometimes, being ignored is the greatest gift we can receive. It forces us to discover who we are when no one is paying attention. That person you are in solitude, in difficult times, when only you believe in yourself. That is the most powerful version of who you can become. She would always pause dramatically, looking directly at the young faces in the audience. Many clearly saw themselves reflected in her inspiring story. But here's the secret that no one tells you. Your pain has an expiration date, but your strength is eternal. Every tear you shed today is watering the garden of the extraordinary person you will become tomorrow. Every no you hear is just the universe redirecting you to the yes that will change your life forever. And you know what else? Those who underestimate you today will be the first to want to associate themselves with your success tomorrow. But by then you will have learned to value those who saw you shine, even when your light was just beginning to shine. Isabella always ended her lectures with a serene and confident smile, knowing that her words planted powerful seeds in hearts that would one day blossom into stories of overcoming as powerful as her own. Because in the end, she discovered that her greatest victory was not proving that her former tormentors were wrong about her, it was discovering that she was always right about herself. Now tell me, if you could go back in time and talk to that person who underestimated you, what would you say? And most importantly, you can see your scars as evidence of your strength and not yours weakness? Share in the comments the moment in your life when you decided that you would no longer be invisible, because your story could be exactly the inspiration that someone needs to hear today. If this story made you rethink your own story and reminded you of your own worth, leave a like to confirm that you enjoyed the message and subscribe to the channel, because here we believe that everyone has an incredible story to tell, including you. And also tell me where you are watching this video from. I love to know how far our stories go. We have many other exciting stories waiting for you. Click on the recommended videos on the screen and continue this journey with us. Thank you very much for being part of this community. May God bless you and your family. Until the next video.